Okay, so a few simple steps to regrip a golf club, and there's just a few tools that you need, and we'll walk through exactly what you do need. But I'm going to kind of talk through some of the different dynamics of regripping and some of the different processes that are used, and why we at Golf Pride prefer a certain method, okay, and why we wouldn't use another. So the first step is to start the regripping process is obviously to remove the golf grip. And I always use a hook blade here. And the reason I use a hook blade is because it will get on the underside of the grip and it will slide on this flat part all the way up the shaft, okay? And it doesn't damage the shaft at all. And you really want to be careful when you do some graphite shafts because you can actually dig into that fiber. And if you ever see some scratches around the mouth of the grip, on the shaft, that it was somebody that wasn't careful with the hook blade. So what I'll do is I'll just kind of get this underneath the lip of the grip, and then I'll just kind of pull up. And you always want to, when you do this, you always want to push the blade away from you. I've seen some guys that actually, I don't recommend this, that will lock a club into a vise, and they'll try and pull away this way. And if you get the blade caught or it jumps and it comes out, and suddenly, that blade is coming at you, and that's never a good spot to be in. So I'll even tell guys in the office if they're back here kind of, talking to me when I'm regripping, to kind of move away. You get some guys sitting there talking to you, and I don't want to be, doing this right at his grill. That's not a good place to be. So I will make sure it's clear in front of me. I'll put this underneath the lip of the grip, and I'll just kind of push upward. So, you quick apply some force, right? And sometimes I'll even put like 2 cuts into it so it's easier to kind of slide off, okay? Like that. And you can really feel that this flat part of the blade is literally on the shaft and is kind of riding, all the way to the end cap. And it should come off fairly easy now. So, you can see this thing just like that, boom. And it comes off easy. So the next step is to remove the tape, and this is where a lot of people, they don't think about this, and we'll even go into some retail shops and some club repair shops, kind of as a blind shopper or whatever, and ask them to regrip a club just to observe what they do. And a lot of guys, okay, they do that stuff correctly, then they get here, and let's say I want a standard size grip, and they get lazy and they don't take off this tape. And you always want to take off that tape because if you don't, you start stacking layers of tape on tape, and that grip is going to be a lot bigger than what you want, right? So I'll feel a grip, and it's like, yeah, I wanted a standard size, and he'll be like, well, it is a standard size, and did you take off all the tape? And oh, I didn't, and that's why you always want to get this tape off. So you start with just a steel shaft, and we'll always use a heat gun here at Golf Pride. What this heat gun does is it negates the stickiness of the tape, right? So it allows it to kind of peel off the shaft very, very easy. So this thing gets pretty hot. You just want to heat this up a little bit. It'll come right off. And there's some tape that's easier to peel off than others. Some of the OEMs will use some very, very thin tape. Very thin tape. But here's the interesting, get this a little bit hotter here. The interesting thing about our grips is, when we build these grips, the actual cavities, we take into account the thickness of one piece of 2-sided tape on the shaft into the actual build of the cavity. So we're taking this into account. So we assume that there's going to be a finished OD outside diameter to the grip based on a shaft and one piece of 2-sided tape put on it. Okay? So you want to make sure, if you want to get our kind of finished spec, that you get to just a steel shaft, and then you can go from there. But you can see that this stuff comes off fairly easily once you heat it up a little bit. We'll get this off real quick. There you go. And sometimes this stuff can be a little bit difficult, but the hotter you get, the easier it comes off. I'm going to hit it with one more shot. You just want to be careful when you heat this up. Like I said, this heat gun can get this incredibly hot. You don't want to get this thing red hot and start touching it with bare skin. So this should be enough right there. Just want to make sure you get it all off because, if you don't, if this becomes difficult off here and you leave some tape on there, then suddenly, it's going to feel a little bit larger under the top couple fingers. So there we go. It's done and dusted. Put it in there. And a lot of people ask me, like, oh, how do you make sure that you get this grip on straight? Well, the first thing is to make sure that you get it in the vise straight, where that club face is dead square. And I always look at the scoring lines on the face, and I make sure that those scoring lines are perpendicular to the ground. There's kind of an imaginary line there. And you get kind of a trained eye when you do this a lot, but you can obviously adjust it a little bit in the vise like that. So I know that that scoring line is just perpendicular to the ground, and then I know I can put it on straight. So what I'll do now is install a CP2, and I always have the same exact grip on the side to make sure when I install this grip that the length is correct, right? So I'll kind of do this when I put it on, but some guys will put a grip on, they'll put it on too far and they'll stretch it on, or they won't get it on far enough, and the length of the grip won't be correct. So that's your little tape machine here. We'll roll this out. So here's what I do: is I always make sure that the tape is a little bit longer past the top of the end cap, so no tape will be sticking out the bottom of the grip, right? So just peel that off, and you always want to leave a little bit of overhang on this. And the reason you leave the overhang is so the shaft won't puncture the end cap. And we make these end caps that are firmer than the body. It's a cap stock, we call it. So we take into account, if somebody's going to really roughneck this and put it on with a lot of force, it's not going to puncture through. And also when you get done installing it, a lot of guys will slam it on the ground to make sure it's seated correctly. And this cap is thick enough and firm enough that it's not going to puncture through. Okay, so you just smooth this tape out, like so. Make sure that's on. No bubbles or whatever. And you just kind of peel this off like that and fold it into the end of the shaft there, right? So all those sharp edges are no longer there, okay? So then you just put some mineral spirits on right here, and that's what we use here. And what this does is it just allows the stickiness of the tape to kind of go away and allows the grip to slide on, and then it evaporates, sticks to the inside of the grip, okay? You want to make sure that everything's properly ventilated. But I switch some around on the inside of the grip. I use my finger to cover the blowhole there so nothing will fall out of the end. So the inside of the grip is coated, the outside of the tape is coated, and this thing just slides on very, very easily. And I always use both hands, so I move it down with the right hand, and then I make sure that it's seated correctly with with my other hand, and you can feel the shaft kind of hit the end of that end cap, and you'll know it's put on correctly. And that's where I take my other grip to make sure that this thing is on exactly the same length as an uninstalled grip. And you can see that the double lines of connector, the end of the mouth of the grip, the logos, everything lines up exactly the same. Okay, and then this is where you can kind of adjust it a little bit. And the reason we put these little alignment ticks on the mouth and the end cap is so you can kind of line them up in a straight line. So everything is just vertically aligned there with the logo, the ticks, the texture, everything about it. Then I always give this a little wiggle right there to make sure that that shaft is seated correctly. And we've gotten some close before where you feel the end of the grip and it's like coming off of the shaft. It wasn't seated correctly, right? And then you end up with a grip that's it's not installed correctly, and the grip ends up making the club longer than it should be. So then I just give it a little tap there to make sure it's seated correctly. And I always do this. I always look at it like I'm setting up to the shot. You can still adjust this. And this is what Mineral Spirits allows an installer to do, is really adjust this, little tweaks. And I'm talking about little texture patterns. I make sure everything is lined up correctly. If you try and blow this on with air, I know some people do that, it's very difficult to make sure that the texture is all lined up correctly. You might get the logo right, you might get the double lines right, but some of the guys on tour, they're very particular about how this is installed. And for example, on the Tour Velvet, they see like a row of plus signs just kind of moved over, it's falling one way. They don't like that. You want to make sure that everything is exactly the same, lined up correctly. Okay? So that's finished. So now we're going to install a cord grip, a full cord grip. And I'm going to talk about installing a full cord grip, how we do it at Golf Pride with grip solvent versus air. And we get this question a lot. I used compressed air to blow on a grip, and that's fine for an all rubber grip. We don't have a problem with that. I think it is more difficult to line up all the texture on there correctly. But when you get to a full core grip, I tell people never to use compressed air. And there's a reason why. So these grips are manufactured with cord prep material. So there's cord actually on the inside of this grip. There's different layers, right? And how you get the cord exposed is you buff it when it comes out of the cavity. So if you took some sandpaper and sanded this grip, you'd actually expose some fresh cord. But what you don't want to do is really stress this cord material, okay? And how you stress this cord material is you really, you can blow it on, but what you do when you blow it on is you make the grip OD larger than it was meant to be, and this cord will crack. So I just want to, kind of demonstrate what happens, and you can probably hear this when I do this. But when I twist this grip really hard, you can hear this cord kind of crackle. Can you hear that? It's yeah. So that cord strand is breaking. And I always tell people to think about it like a seatbelt or something. Like if you get in an accident, that seatbelt gets flexed, right? And it's made of some material, like some type of textile material, but it really stretches and it stresses it. And a lot of times you have to get that seatbelt replaced if it's been in an accident because it's no longer going to perform like it was meant to. And when you start really stressing this cord material and you hear it crack, and you do that when you put compressed air into it and blow it up like a balloon, you really stress this grip material, and it's going to make it not last as long as it should be. And you can also see it start to fray on the surface of the grip, and that's never a good thing. So what we do is we got the tape on, it's already measured out, and it's no different than installing any other grip. Just put the mineral spirits on there like this. And this isn't going to stretch the material at all. And that's the other thing, if you look at the guys on tour, on the tour van, they're not trying to blow on full core grips, and a lot of guys out there use full core grips. Because if you do, you really stress that material, okay? It'll make the grip wear out a lot quicker than it should. So that went on correctly. And that's the other thing about these full core grips is, I always want to make sure that these things are lined up perfectly as far as the vertical alignment of all the texture patterns. And if you try and blow a grip on and you don't have tape, it's even harder if you do have tape. It's more of a friction fit, right? So you can't tweak it a little bit this way or a little bit that way. After you install it on, you have to keep giving it constant shots of air. And that's going to constantly continue to stress the material. So if I need to wiggle this one way, like this E looks like it's a little bit kind of falling over to the right side, I can simply adjust it because the tape is still allows that. The mineral spirits, they haven't evaporated yet, okay? With air, you have to kind of put this back in there, give it a shot, and you might get the front of it straight, but if you turn it over, suddenly, the texture's going this way. But with this, everything is just lined up exactly straight because I can just tweak it a little bit because the tape and the solvent is allowing that to happen. So, that's straight.